Hello, everybody out there in Periscope land. I'm Frank Washkuch from PRWeek. We're getting ready to shoot and record this week's Para-podcast, combination of a Periscope and a Periscope broadcast and a podcast session. Here with Diana Bradley and Stacey Tank from Home Depot. So we're going to start recording in a few seconds. 5, 4, 3. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PR Week. That's PR Week's weekly broadcast covering everything going on in the worlds of PR, communications, and marketing. My name is Frank Washkuch. I'm the news editor of PR Week, and we have a special edition of the podcast this week for PR Week's annual conference here in Midtown in New York City. So we have a special guest. I'm here with Stacey Tank. She is the head communications person at the Home Depot in Atlanta. Stacey, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming aboard the podcast on such short notice. Just got you on board today.
Absolutely. No, happy to be here.
Very
That's
cool.
the name of our profession, right? We got to keep it light.
And Diana Bradley is here. She is our corporate reporter and well known to the weekly listeners and, I guess, viewers now of the podcast, right?
Yeah.
So, Stacey, tell us a little bit about what you talked about this morning in your Q&A on stage at the conference.
Absolutely. So we were talking about the retail space and what it means to build reputation, both in the short-term sense, because retail is very incentivized to sell today, but also what does it mean to cultivate a relationship and to build trust with your different stakeholders, whether that's your employee base, whether that's the community you operate in, your customers, government, etc. How do you do that in the midterm and the long term while still preserving that sort of fast-paced retail commercial sales environment that's very inherent to retail, as I'm learning?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what else did you pick up today from the conference? Any other sessions you really enjoyed? I
really enjoyed Hoda's remarks, and actually it brought me back to how fundamental storytelling is to what we do. She was so accessible. She was so, unguarded and real and emotional and honest, and it just captivated all of us. We all sat right on the edge of our seat as she was talking about Hurricane Katrina, as she was talking about her personal journey with breast cancer. And there are topics that sometimes would be uncomfortable to talk about. And I think there were a few tears in the audience, and I was definitely trying to hold them back as she was talking about, those moments on the streets in New Orleans when people are being separated from their children, and there's just so much tension and stress and no path to resolution. And so she was an amazing storyteller. It reminded me that we can talk about a lot of fancy new tools. Mm-hmm. We can talk about expensive metrics and ways to go beyond impressions. But at the end of the day, if you're an amazing storyteller, that's where you're going to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking before, and some people who make their living being on TV translate better to live events than other people do. And I think Hoda translates really well to a live event because she just seems so comfortable and a great personality to be on stage. Dana, you wrote a story about Hoda's Q&A. Hoda's Q&A. What did you think?
No, I thought it was great. She told an interesting story about how when she was first diagnosed with breast cancer, I think back in 2007, she was, kind of reticent about sharing her story publicly. But then she ended up on an airplane sitting next to just a complete stranger who was very nosy, and kind of talked her into opening up a little bit about her breast cancer. And he said, you shouldn't hog your own story. You should share your journey because it could help other people in the same boat. So I thought, that was a really good point, and she has such a huge platform, and she realized that, with her platform she could use that to help people. So I thought that was really interesting. But she also added that she doesn't really like to share too much personal stuff because it's meaningless after a while, so she's still very private, but when it matters she shares her story. So
I thought it was really interesting to hear a famous person say to talk about how they're private about some details of their lives, because I'm personally a private person, and I don't think I've ever heard somebody famous talk about that before, so it was kind of interesting and refreshing, and it's not something you hear all the time. You hear somebody who is really in the spotlight talk about how they work to keep things in their private lives private. So interesting stuff.
Definitely.
Tiki Barber is, I think, just wrapping up right now you were in the Tiki Barber
Yes.
room, right? What did we miss?
Absolutely. He was talking about the tension between national spokespeople and then the ability, on the flip side, to really harness local celebrities to actually generate more of an emotional connection with communities, and how you may, and I think for some campaigns, a national, a Rihanna, a Beyonce, he was using, the Coke and Pepsi campaigns as examples. But there are going to be other times, especially if you have more of a local commercial offering, where a local celebrity is going to make more sense. And he was talking a lot about the cost efficiencies of playing your campaigns that way too. It was pretty cool because he showed the dashboard that they have in their site and how you can put in your criteria. So you might be looking for someone who is active between the ages of 40 and 50, who enjoys tennis and sleeps on their left side, or whatever the criteria are. And then it'll match you, like Match.com, with your best potential connections, and then you can actually look at pricing and try to engage with them. So it's like a spokesperson matchmaker digital site.
But being a spokesperson is kind of a little bit of a dangerous game nowadays, in that you have the Buffalo Wild Wings spokesperson was caught in a bit of a lie this morning, and that story that came out more nationally. And there's of course Jared at Subway, and these are two totally different things, obviously. But you see the risk for brands too when they bring somebody on that's a well-known, prominent spokesperson in all their commercials. Okay, Diana, what else was your other favorite session today besides Hoda?
I thought that the keynote by Sally Sussman, who's the AVP of Corporate Affairs at Pfizer, I thought that her, what she had to say was interesting. She made a really interesting point about certain things that Pfizer is looking into next going forward. They want to figure out how to communicate with the, younger people because a lot of young people see big pharma as being bad. So I thought that was interesting. That that's something they'll be focusing on going forward, and it'll be interesting to see how they tackle that.
And that whole tension between big corporates being bad and small companies, local companies being good is really, really interesting, because if we live in a world where into the foreseeable future big companies are bad, there's a pretty significant social impact to that emotion. And if it's sort of hard to pick apart whether this is something with permanence, is this something that happened because of the Enrons and then the journey we've been on for the last 10 or 15 years, if it's going to, as the economy gets better, if it's going to change, or if this is sort of a permanent state of affairs. And I know we have a leader from Kind on the agenda, and they, I think, are still independently owned.
Yes, they are.
So I think it'll be interesting to watch brands like that go through their journey, and if they become acquired, do they lose the halo? What does it take?
And Kind's in such a fascinating space, too, because there's so many more healthy bar options, for the bar category, as they call it, than there were a few years ago, and that they are just everywhere, and it's honestly hard to keep track of what's what when you go to the store. And I mean, Kind is interesting too, in that they're New York based. They're looked at as being kind of local here, but I think other people see them as more national. So I think they're a really interesting brand too. Do we want to take some questions from the Periscope audience, Byron?
If there are any viewers out there right now that have any questions for either Frank or for Diana or for Stacey, especially Stacey, you can send them right now and we'll try to answer them right away.
He's putting us on the spot. I assumed we had a few already. Really interesting sessions today. Great conference so far. We're looking forward to wrapping it up tonight with the 40 Under 40 dinner, which will honor 40 of the best PR communications and marketing pros under the age of 40. So we'll be doing that, and that will cap off the conference. As far as the podcast goes, I think we're going to wrap it up right now. That's about all we have time for. Stacey, thanks again so much for coming on. Diana, thanks as always. And that's about it. So we'll see you next week.
So that's it for the podcast recording. We have a little bit of time left. If there's anybody out there who has any questions, speak now or forever hold your silence.
Thank you for this. We put it together last night.
Of course. No, very happy to. This is fun. I'm going to start downloading them.
So do you miss Fairfield or not really?
I love moving around.
Yeah.
I love the adventure of it, and I am loving Atlanta. It's
Okay.
a really cool place to live. There's so much art. There are so many places to eat. I'm a total foodie. And I was mentioning to you guys earlier, I'm getting a huge kick out of being able to raise chickens, right, in the city of Atlanta. Which
are you in the city limits?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, and in Fulton County, you can have 25 chickens per acre.
That's
in
crazy.
case anyone is interested.
It's regulated. That's amazing.
Yes. So we have fresh eggs every morning for breakfast, and we make cakes and cookies, and
That's amazing.
they're lovely little pets.
That's quite a difference from the New York metro area.
Yeah, in Fairfield they don't
quite do
embrace
chickens.
the chickens. You can also have goats on your property. I mean, it's pretty
Really?
agricultural for a city. So
That is, I think in Fairfield they would have to duck the trains coming every so often, right?
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. Good?
No questions yet, so we're going to let Stacey go for now. We'd love to have you back on again if you're ever in here. If there's no one else out there with a question,
All right.
nope, we're going to
Thank you,
shut it down
Periscope.
right now.